Smith, Hockey and Sports Betting. And now, here's your host, Ian Cameron.
Welcome to the Ice Guys, presented by Boston Hemp Inc. Sunday, April 14th. Ian Cameron, Alex B. Smith, ready to break down the Sunday card. We have 4 games on tap for this Sunday, including a couple of matinee affairs in the NHL. So looking forward to breaking those down in just a moment or two. But first, of course, we have to look back on just a crazy Saturday in the NHL. There was just so much at stake, so much on the line, division battles, playoff positioning, teams just trying to make the playoffs, especially in that crazy Eastern Conference wildcard race. The day started with just a terrific hockey game in the Battle of New York. The Islanders and the Rangers lived up to the billing. It was a great game. I mean, it had intensity. It was one of those days where the Madison Square Garden crowd brought their they were absolutely outstanding throughout that game. They were into it. The pace was terrific. Some nice goals. Some exciting action for a game that stayed under the total. 3-2, of course, it ended in favor of the Rangers in overtime. It was not a 3-2 type of pace. It was a very entertaining game. The goaltending from the 2 Russians actually both played very well. Ilya Sorokin and, of course, the winning goalie, Igor Shesterkin. Bob Wischusen was electric on the mic. I mean, that game had everything going for it yesterday. It was just a great hockey game. The Rangers find a way to tie it. What a shot by Panarin off the faceoff to tie it. And then they get the job done in the shootout and a 3-2 win for the New York Rangers. The draw comes through. We loved that draw yesterday. Both Alex and I were very, very outspoken about liking the draw in that game. And it ends up coming through at a very solid price, plus 360 to get the day started. So, and then look, even though the Islanders lost, that's another valuable, huge point for them as they get ever so closer to clinching a playoff spot, still sitting in a very good situation right now. 90 points, 3rd place in the Metro Division, and 3 points clear of the Washington Capitals, the nearest team to them. What else did we see? Dallas, congratulations to them. Congratulations to our guy, Matt Robinson. I know he was very happy to see them finally get the division clinched. Wasn't a great performance by Dallas by any stretch of the imagination, especially that first period. My goodness. You talk about fortuitous score to be up 1-0 after the opening period. But nevertheless, they got the job done. 3-1 Kraken. Split for me. I had the team total and Dallas in regulation. So we won 1, we lost 1 with those two. But Seattle punches their ticket as Central Division champions. The shocking result of the day, it's not so much Winnipeg won the game, it's how they won. What can you say? I mean, I was just stunned about the domination early in that game from the Winnipeg Jets, up 4-0 after the first period, and they end up routing the Colorado Avalanche 7-0. It was the Winnipeg Blue Bombers defeating the Denver Broncos, I think, in that game yesterday. The touchdown and the extra point for the Winnipeg Jets. What a performance by them. And that's now, how about the last 2 games for the Winnipeg Jets? I've seen people on social media the last couple days, or last couple months really, when Winnipeg started to swoon. And I did say I was concerned about them at the time. But I never once said that I totally write them off once we get into the play. Was I concerned? Yes, but I never once said, oh, they're going to fall on their face and lose in the first round totally. But you look at what they've done here in these last 2 games. They go to Dallas and they go to Colorado, and they win those games by a combined 10-0. Shut out both teams. Stars and the Avs, supposedly 2 of the heavyweights in the Western Conference playoff race. I mean, if that's not enough to impress you about what the Winnipeg Jets have done the last 2 games, I don't know. Yeah. They are really putting together a body of work right now, Alex, that makes me think, maybe they have a run in them. However, the one thing that I do caution people on is, getting over that first round is still a bit of a stigma with them. And we know first round just went disastrously for them against Vegas. But you also have to remember that last year going into the playoffs, Winnipeg was a disaster. They were horrible. They were struggling. They were reeling. They went into the playoffs ice cold, not playing good hockey, stumbling and bumbling and just reeling in the second half of the season after the All-Star break. Now, their post-All-Star break schedule started the same way, where they were struggling and reeling. But my goodness, you talk about turning things around. They're on this red hot win streak. You can't ask for a much better 3 straight wins as far as quality of opponents. You beat a Nashville team that's been red hot for the last month or two, Dallas and Colorado, 3 in a row. Doesn't get much better than that. So, and look, Winnipeg, if Gabe Vilardi's going to play like this, if Kyle Connor, who's dominating again, Scheifele is stepping up, Monahan's been incredible. I can't say a bad word about him. And I ripped the guy all over the place when he was with Calgary. I couldn't believe how bad he was at times, especially in the playoffs. And he's got to show it in the playoffs. But right now, he's been phenomenal for the Winnipeg Jets, Sean Monahan. It's looking like just a tremendous, tremendous addition by Kevin Cheveldayoff. They have the goaltending, obviously, with Hellebuck when he's on his game, and Laurent Brossoit is as good a backup as there is right now in the NHL. I'm going to ask you, Alex, because there's a lot of people saying, well, Colorado doesn't give 2 shits about the home ice advantage, and they played like it yesterday. I know, okay, maybe it's not that big of a deal to them, but 7-0 on your home ice there? No, that I can't accept that. I can't accept that, you know what, Colorado doesn't care about home ice advantage in the first round series against Winnipeg as much as the Jets do. That's why they bombed out yesterday. I can't accept that as a reason. I can't accept that as an explanation for yesterday. I can't. I won't accept that. It can't be that whoa, it just didn't care as much about the home ice as Winnipeg in that first round series. That's why they played like that yesterday. Bullshit. They were awful. They were terrible defensively. I don't know if I've seen the Kilo play as bad defensively as they did yesterday. Awful. Letting their check go to the front of the net, letting guys, their tap-ins and rebounds in front of the net. And look, Georgiev was bad too, but man, he was abandoned as far as I'm concerned in that first period. The whole collective defensive outfit for Colorado was an abomination, flat out, in that opening period yesterday. Goaltender included. He wasn't good either, but man, he didn't have a lot of help in that first period. To me, it's not just, that maybe they don't care about the home ice advantage and second in the Central as much as Winnipeg. That is a concerning, alarming type of effort on home ice against a team you're going to see in the playoffs from the Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Okay, even if home ice doesn't matter, but you're going up against the team that you're going to most likely play, especially now it's official. You're playing in the first round, so you don't want to get embarrassed by this team. You don't want to get exposed by this team and then have to realize, this is who we're playing in another week and having to go on the road now to start that series. It's bad, and I've been talking about this for a while with Colorado. They're having, some defensive issues. I talked mostly about the goaltending, how they've been wearing Georgiev down to the ground. But you have defensive breakdowns on top of a tired goalie. You're probably not even going to make it out 5-6 games in the first round, especially now that you have to go on the road. Now, keep in mind, this is a Colorado team that had played like shit at home early and then got things wrapped around, and then all of a sudden they were hot at home. So they've been up and down throughout the year. But you still want to have home ice advantage, especially if this is a tight enough series that most would expect to go 6 or 7 games. Having that 7th game at home means all the world of difference. But even with that being said, you got to tighten it up defensively. You make Winnipeg look like a team that can outrun and gun you, which we know that's not the case, and that's not the style they're going to play. Once
they made them look like the '80s Oilers for crying out loud yesterday.
Yeah.
Just embarrassing them defensively.
If the matchups are that bad now, then what's going to change in a week when this series starts in Winnipeg? I don't think much, to be honest.
And you got to deal with the whiteout in games 1 and 2. If you play like that in the whiteout of Winnipeg, where look, I know the fans had issues filling the building early in the year, but you're not going to have to worry about that in the playoffs. It'll be full. It'll be sold out. They'll be loud. They're always loud in the playoffs. Those Jets fans in home playoff games. If you play like that in game 1 or 2 against Winnipeg in Winnipeg, you're going to lose just as badly. So, if you're Colorado, you've got a lot of work to do. And I'm fascinated beyond belief what response we're going to see from the Avs this afternoon as they are right back in action. It's almost a good thing for them. They're right back at it today.
Yeah, that is.
A fucking debacle like that yesterday. Get right back at it today against another very good team, the Vegas Golden Knights, the defending champions. A TNT game, by the way, this afternoon, and see what they're made of. We're going to find out something about this Colorado Avalanche team here in this afternoon and see what that response is like. Moving on down the rest of the card, we had a swatch of games at 5 p.m. Eastern, that hour, that were really chock full of playoff implications. The Flyers, man, was a sweat to the finish. And if you would have told me of things I did not expect out of that game, a 1-0 final is not what I expected out of that game. But a 1-0 final it was for the Philadelphia Flyers. So my overs were shot in that game. But for the Flyer, I did cash the Flyers money line, so that's the good news. We did take a shot with them on the money line in that game. They squeaked it out. Team total obviously fell short as well, but the Flyers got it done. The defense and goaltending has finally settled a little bit these last two games. They held the Rangers to one win. What's not one win, one goal. They shut out the Devils yesterday. That's a good sign. And you know what? These are now 2 games in a row. Torts has got this team playing the way he wants. Defensively responsible. Don't take as many risks. Let the defensive play lead to your offense. That's kind of the approach we've seen from Philly here these last 2 games. And I think now Torts has finally drilled it through their brains how to play if they're going to win games here down the stretch. And they're not out of it. The disadvantage they have, though, is they're still on the outside looking in, and they only have 1 game left. Everyone else has 2. And I still think they're not going to make it, and I still think they're going to end up just beside themselves and just ruining the fact that they just pissed away with bad performances against teams they should have beat, like a Columbus, like a Montreal, like a Chicago. I remember that home loss to the Blackhawks as well. They're going to rue those losses, and those are the losses that might come back and haunt the Philadelphia Flyers as far as falling short in the race to make the Stanley Cup playoffs. Great and a very huge win for the Washington Capitals, 4-2 over the Tampa Bay Lightning. They needed it badly, and they got it. So credit to them. And now because of that win and everybody else stumbling around them a little bit, with the exception of Detroit, we've got Pittsburgh stumbled. Actually, I've got that wrong. Everyone got the job done yesterday except Pittsburgh. So it was very important for Washington to win. Everyone else took care of their business. The Islanders, the Capitals, the Red Wings, which we'll get to in just a moment. But yeah, I was on Washington here. First period, full game money line split. I felt, you know what? This is just from an intensity and meaning standpoint. This just doesn't mean as much to Tampa. And Tampa still gave you a game effort. They did. But you could tell there was just that little extra to win puck battles from the Capitals throughout that game because they were playing for their lives and for their season, and Tampa was not. And that ended up being a big-time difference. 4-2 for Washington there. Better performance in net from Charlie Lindgren, and a scary moment in this game with Nick Jensen. Crashes into the end boards and had to be taken off on a stretcher, but apparently got to the hospital, moving. All extremities apparently were fine. So great news. Very relieved to hear that Nick Jensen looks like he's going to be okay after that scary moment in that Lightning and Capitals game. From a betting standpoint, it was a great game. I mean, first period over for both Alex and I. Very easy. It was 2-2 in the opening period. And then, of course, Washington gets the job done. So that was definitely a good betting result in that game. Ottawa, 5-4 win against the Canadiens in a shootout. Ottawa wins their final home game. We talked about that angle on the show yesterday, the final home game for the teams not making the playoffs. I think there's a little more incentive to win those games, and Ottawa got the job done. 5-4 against Montreal. I kind of leaned over in that game, and sure enough, 9 goals. The 2 teams out of the playoffs playing for exercise. We often see games like that when that happens. Not much defense and shot blocking taking place. The Detroit Red Wings, man, they almost blew it. 4-1 lead in the first. It looks like, wow, they're in control here. But their defense is still very shaky, and they showed it. Toronto responds, 3 unanswered goals in the second period to tie it 4-4. One of those goals being Austin Matthews getting his 69th goal. He is now 1 away from 70. I was hoping he'd get 70 last night. We had the over 1.5 goals, but only got the 1. So he's going to have to get his 70th goal on the road in either Florida or Tampa Bay to finish the regular season. But so while I was disappointed, Alex, the over 1.5 goals fell short. My shots on goal approach with Austin Matthews, I swept the board with it. I went with over 4.5 shots on goal, 5.5, 6.5, 7.5, 8.5. I even bet fucking over 9.5 shots on goal for Austin Matthews, as much as I could find at Bet365, and that was 12-1. And sure enough, how many shots did he have last night? 10. 10 shots on goal. And that's what I expected. That's why it was a great bet. Betting all those, increasing shots on goal player props with Austin Matthews last night. You knew he was going to be Wyatt Earp. He was going to shoot from everywhere, I was hoping I wasn't sure he was going to get to 10. But I said, let's take a shot. Maybe he can get to 10 shots on goal. And sure enough, he did. And the over 9.5 shots was plus 1,200. And the others were even pretty good prices, plus 310, plus, I think it was plus 600 for the over 8.5. So these were really good prices. And so that was great to see. Would have just been icing on the cake if he had gotten the 2 goals and the 70 last night. But that's the approach. And even with Forsberg, which we'll get to in a moment, I was on that same shots on goal approach. He only got to 6, but we still got 2 legs of that as far as his shots on goal as well last night in that game. And just like Austin Matthews, he only got the 1 goal. He didn't get the 2 or the hat trick against Columbus last night. But a huge win for Detroit. Mr. Clutch, Dylan Larkin with the overtime winner. Not a shock at all. That he's been their Sidney Crosby, doing everything he can humanly do to drag the Detroit Red Wings into the playoffs. So just an outstanding job by Detroit to find a way to get 2 valuable, huge points against the Leafs last night. And that was a great game for me. Unbelievable. Detroit money line, team total, full game over by facta. Everything there in that game was just amazing. That was a game that really made it a good day. It was just, and the only thing missing was Matthews getting 2. But we had the shots on goal wins. We had the over by facta. We had Detroit money line, Detroit team total. So it was a great game there, betting wise. Nashville 6-4 against Columbus. The only thing I add here was Forsberg props and a little Nashville team total over 3.5, which was pretty easy. I mean, 6 goals against that bad Columbus defense, and Jet Greaves, who's just not NHL caliber. None of their goalies right now, really, Columbus are NHL caliber. You could argue even Merzlikins is an NHL caliber. Or Tarasov's actually been solid at times, but certainly not Jet Greaves or Malcolm Subban right now. And Nashville lit him up for 6 goals. I was hoping more than one of those goals would have been Philip Forsberg, but he did score. He did get to 6 shots, so we cashed a couple shots on goal props. But that leaves a big task in front of him, because now he's still stuck on 47 with just the 1 goal last night. He's at 47, and he now is going to need a hat trick in his final game. And they only have 1 game left, Nashville. So he's going to have to get to 50. He's going to need a hattie in the final game of the season for the Nashville Predators. But I'll probably bet the hat trick in that game. I'll take a shot at it. He's still going to try. There's no doubt. He was trying last night. He had 6 shots on goal. It's just unfortunately only one of them went in for him. Boston, just a damaging loss for Pittsburgh. 6-4 for the Bruins last night. This is the one that hurt me a little bit, especially because I used it as the best bet on the show with Pittsburgh. But credit to Boston. They capitalized. And my fears about that game, it's also why I was on the over by facta in that game, which was the good part about that game. You look at it, actually, the over by facta didn't win. The first period part of it did not. Only the full game went over. But the one thing I was worried about for Pittsburgh, Alex, Nedeljkovic, okay, the workload, lots of games, lots of high stress, high anxiety hockey that this guy has had to play in net for 12, 13, 14 straight starts for him, something like that. He's not as sharp right now, flat out. He is just not as sharp right now, and I think the workload is adding up. And look, I know Mike Sullivan has not got a lot of confidence. He's clearly lost confidence in Tristan Jarry, but I don't know. I think he's got to get in there, Tristan Jarry, at this point. You got to give him a chance. Nedeljkovic is running on fumes right now. I think when you look at it for Pittsburgh and Mike Sullivan, costly day and night, because everyone that they're battling with won yesterday, and they're the only team that lost. He's got to try Jarry at one of these last 2 games because I think Nedeljkovic is running out of gas here a little bit. He has just not been on his angle. His rebound control's not been as good. He just hasn't. His movement in the pipes has not been as fluid here in these last few games. But Boston with a big win. And look, I think Boston, the urgency to win ramped up for them after seeing Florida beat Buffalo in the game earlier to keep pace in the Atlantic Division race. So it was a big 2 points for Boston, and they have games in hand on Florida as well. 3-1 Vancouver, nice win for them. They take a huge, gigantic step forward to clinching the Pacific Division, which they probably will. The question of when, not if now, after that big 3-1 win against Edmonton. Very solid performance from Casey DeSmith, one of his better performances in quite some time. And that looked more like an Edmonton team that missed Connor McDavid last night than obviously what we saw against Vegas in particular early in the week. LA beats Anaheim 3-1, and then Minnesota 6-2 against San Jose. Thanks for showing up for your final home game, San Jose. So there's a couple of bucks down the toilet betting on a bad team like that, but I still would do it over again. it was the final home game. I did not trust Minnesota, but obviously it's lesser trust that you should have in San Jose in a game like that. Alex, thoughts on the remainder of what we saw?
Yeah, we started with that Boston and Pittsburgh game. Like you said, Nedeljkovic, we worried about him, being able to just kind of weather the storm of playing this many, big time games, this many big time minutes down the stretch. And it's funny, Cheshire Cat going, yeah, did they pay Jari all this money? Shouldn't he be the guy to step in a big money situation game like this, a big money game like this? And you're rolling with the hot hand, but at the same time, it's like maybe you got to shuffle the deck a little bit better, down the stretch. So hindsight 2020, of course, and they still got 2 games left, so they can still make a run for it. Where, like I said, a team like Philadelphia more than likely going to be done out of the way. Also, when you look at that log jam, they do have more regulation wins than Detroit, Philly, and Washington. So that's something that could also help them out too. They get a regulation win against Washington. That'll be huge. That'll be paramount for them to move up those 3 spots essentially and try to get back in that second wild card spot. The Wild and Sharks, just on that, silly me for taking it under, right? in that game where I thought that the game would just slow down.
Welcome to my world, man. Every time I take an under, I lose, and Alex experienced some of that pain last night.
And like you said, San Jose not showing up in their home finale, but the Wild getting the offense rolling as well was something I didn't expect. I thought that was just going to be kind of a low and slow game. And then you have a game where you think it's going to be high scoring like New Jersey, Philly, and then it ends up only being 1-0. So you get hit with that randomness when you have a big, Saturday card like that. Tampa Bay, Washington was a huge one for maybe hitting that first period over. That was a big spot. And then you mentioned, missing the second goal in both Forsberg and Matthews. But I also have Forsberg 3 points, just missed out on that. Forsberg last goal, which is something that, like I said, that's something I'll definitely be back on again for the finale, if nothing else, because they're going to want to try to defeat him the puck more and more. But, like I said, kudos to you on hitting the ladder with the shots. That's something definitely worth looking at for both of those guys down the stretch. And
yes, it was posted on Patreon, the Matthews shots on goal props. I did post them. The problem is on the Patreon page, I only had up to over 7.5 because I didn't find the over 8.5 and 9.5 till right before puck drop. About 10 minutes before, all of a sudden, Bet365 had the shot props and the milestone shots props, and I'm like, whoa, we can actually go higher than over 7.5. We can go over 8.5, 9.5 there. Otherwise, I would have posted those too. But still, you got 7.5 was plus 550 on that. But yeah, I did post the majority of those shots props on Patreon earlier in the day.
And the biggest thing with those 2 players specifically now moving forward, like I said, with Forsberg, he's going to need a hat trick in the last game. You're going to have to find ways to, obviously you just bet the hat trick, but those numbers are going to be cut down drastically. It was plus 2,800 yesterday. I promise you it won't be that high for his final game. And same thing with Matthews. Now that Matthews is 1 away from 70, we might see him be minus 150, 160 to get a goal, which is going to just drive all the odds down for if you want to bet 2 goals, you want to bet 2 points. So look for those adjustments and keep that in mind when you're thinking about, looking for Matthews or looking for Forsberg at this point, because now with 1 or 2 games left, the bookmakers know they're going to get a ton of action there, and they're going to shrink those odds from what we were seeing yesterday.
I'll tell you what, about Pittsburgh, if he's a bargain bin, if he's in the bargain bin price range in Pittsburgh's next game, I'm going to be betting him. And I put it on the Patreon page, one of my props last night. I forgot, I think, to mention it on the show, but it was on the Patreon page. This guy's playing really well right now. They might have something in him. Drew O'Connor for the Pittsburgh Penguins. What a shorthanded goal that was. He pulled away from the Boston player as a roof job overall, Mark. Shorthanded. That's the goal that got them back to 4-3 last night. And at the moment, I'm like, wow, that's a huge shorthanded goal, too, to get them within 1. I thought for sure at that time Pittsburgh might be coming back, tying it and winning it. But credit to Boston. Very, very mentally resilient team, obviously. They thwarted the Pittsburgh comeback attempt, but Drew O'Connor, he was plus 500 to score a goal last night for Pittsburgh. I'm going to be keeping an eye on that moving forward. He's starting to really show me something, and it helps playing obviously with Crosby, and at times he's played with him for Pittsburgh. But he's playing really well for this Penguins team, no doubt. All right, let's turn the page and let's get our attention on the Sunday slate. 4 games here on this Sunday card, and we begin with a game that's about 30 minutes from now away from starting. We've got the Seattle Kraken and the St. Louis Blues. We can now say that these two teams are both playing for exercise now after the St. Louis Blues were officially eliminated from the Stanley Cup playoff contention mix on Friday with their loss against Carolina, combined with the Vegas win against Minnesota. We've got St. Louis minus 130 home favorites here in this game. The total 5.5, pretty much across the board. Just to get the day started, I have a small bit of the over here. Again, it's just very simple reasoning. You've got two teams out of it. Nobody needs to play defense. Nobody needs to block shots. Your tee times are organized. So I think when you look at this situation here with the Blues and the Kraken, and the Blues have actually been, this week at least, been able to score some goals. We saw even against Carolina, I thought that was a pretty solid offensive effort that they had, albeit in the 4-2 loss, or 5-2 loss rather, to the Hurricanes. We've seen them go over in 3 straight games. 4 of the last 5 games have gone over the total for this St. Louis Blues team. Now, I know Seattle's gone 4 straight to the under, so that does concern me slightly. But you look at this spot, that was a bit of a dodgy, stingy, cagey game yesterday with Dallas 3-1. You're on a back-to-back. You're on the road. Could be a little fatigue setting in potentially for Seattle. It usually shows up at the defensive end of the ice. These two teams, by the way, played in Seattle back in January. We saw that game go over the total, 4-3 Blues in overtime. 4-1 to the over in the last 5 meetings between the Kraken and the Blues. So I do like the over a bit. From a side perspective, I lean St. Louis because of the final home game factor. It is their final home game. Usually teams out of the playoffs do want to show up in that game, like an Ottawa did, for instance, last night. But I don't know if I want to back that at minus 130 coming off the game where you got knocked out and your season ended officially. So that's my one concern. Normally, Blues last home game, I'd be looking St. Louis here. And probably at this price, I would bet it. But if it was like they got knocked out of the playoffs a week ago, Alex, they had a string of games, and then they played this final home game, I'd be more interested in betting St. Louis. But they're coming off the Dream Crusher Friday night where it's officially done, no playoffs. And I'm just kind of worried about what the response is from St. Louis. But I also don't want to fade the last home game angle. So it's a lean St. Louis, but I won't be touching it. Just a little piece of the over here to get the day rolling. What do you think here, Alex? Seattle, St. Louis.
Yeah, just small shots on the first period over, full game over. Like I said, have this game on in a little bit, so maybe try to look for something live to add on because you're laying $1.20 with each, either over 1.5 in the first period or over 5.5. So you can definitely wait a couple minutes if you're seeing the pace, try to grab something at plus money. That's just the kind of way to attack this. Roll the puck out and see if there's goals back and forth.
One of my favorite props of the whole day, and I like it right in this first game, Zachary Bolduc for the St. Louis Blues. Top line, cashed a goal prop with him the other night against Carolina once again, getting great opportunity and not priced like it. Plus 400, BetMGM, plus 400 at FanDuel for Zach Bolduc for the St. Louis Blues. And from what I understand, he's still going to end up playing on the top line once again this afternoon for them. So, another young prospect showing some offensive upside. We talked about what the great season it's been for Jake Neighbors. Jordan Kyrie's had a nice year. But Zach Bolduc right now with Robert Thomas and the captain Braden Shen on that top line has been excellent for the St. Louis Blues. So, yeah, that's one of my favorite props, goal prop-wise, of the entire Sunday slate right there. Zach Bolduc here for the St. Louis Blues. I'm looking to see if there's any lineup juggling right now for Seattle. I will say Burakovsky's probably got some value right now for the Kraken because he's up with Beniers and Eberle on the top line. So there's probably a decent value shot there with him as well. All right, next up, we've got Colorado and Vegas. What on earth will these Avalanche have as a response following just one of the worst games that you will ever see them play yesterday at home against the Winnipeg Jets? We've got Vegas minus 115 home favorites, 6.5 the total in this game. I kind of want to take Colorado first period in some form. I mean, don't you have to respond don't you have a shredded dignity and pride after a game like that? If you do, and you're supposed to be this good team, this first period, you should see the Avalanche with fire under their skates here in this opening period. But, man, I don't know if I trust the defense right now. So what I'm thinking of doing with this game is because I think I want to be on the Avs in the first period in some form, this is where I might go to my good friends at BetMGM and say, you know what? Let's go with team totals in the first period instead with Colorado instead of because at that first period puck line, is definitely appealing. It's plus 192 at Pinnacle for Colorado first period puck line. I got a sprinkle on that at a little bit here in this game. Keep in mind with Vegas, it was probably the best game they've played in a while, albeit Minnesota got issues, but they did play better after a tough road trip. And we'll see if that, but they did clinch a playoff spot with that win. So, now it's just positioning for the Vegas Golden Knights here as to what's on the line here in the last couple games of the regular season. But now they know they're in the postseason. So do they exhale a little bit? Do they, take a breath a little bit here in this game? That's something that remains to be seen. But just based on the situationals, there's just such an embarrassment from Colorado yesterday. You would hope, you would think that there's a response in mind for this Colorado team today. So I'm going to take a shot on the first period puck line, plus 192 on Colorado. But what I like more than that is the team totals. I feel safer because I don't want to worry about puck line getting fucked over by this defense and this goaltending that is suddenly a little bit of a concern for Colorado. So the first period team totals are definitely a good route to go with in order to avoid that. And you can get over 1 plus 150 in the first period for Colorado's team total. And you could sprinkle on a very, very pricey, and I mean a good price, over 1.5 team total for Colorado in the first period is plus 260 at BetMGM. Can they get 2 in the opening period after that debacle yesterday? We'll see, but I think it's worth a shot here. Those little over 1.5 team total sprinkles here on the Colorado Avalanche. I definitely like first period over as well. We've talked about how Colorado's been trending that way of late. I like that more than the full game. I mean, I think we could see, what we could see? We could see 2-2 in the first period or 2-1. And it's like 2-1 in the third period or 2-2 in the third period. I could see that in this game. It reminds me of could you imagine having the full game over 5.5 with Buffalo and Florida yesterday? That fucker was 2-2 after the first period. It got to overtime 2-2. There was not a goal in the final 2 periods. If you had full game over after the first period, you're counting the money already. And sure enough, there's not a goal after that until overtime when Sam Reinhart won it for the Panthers. So that's why I think a lot of the goals will be early here in this game. So first period over, little Colorado first period puck line, and a little bit with the Colorado over 1.5 team totals in the first period as well. Alex, what do you think here? Avs, Golden Knights.
Yeah, so I like the first period over. I'm betting a little bit of it small. I'm seeing the cheapest price, $1.32 at FanDuel, but I will look to add a little bit more on in game. Try to catch a plus price with that. But also like both teams to score plus 160. That's actually what I'm heavier on for a pregame look. I definitely think we see goals early, and I think we see goals going both ways. I can't trust Colorado to just automatically come out, have the offense running, but also shut things down on the back end too. So I do think we see at least a goal for each team in the first 20 minutes.
All right, there we go. So primarily for Alex, first period over, and both teams to score in the first period, which is a nice, plus 160 price range type of bet. Joey Decord and Joel Hofer, by the way, are the goalies in the Seattle-St. Louis game. It's Alexander Georgiev, who got pulled yesterday, and Aiden Hill getting the starts for their teams in this Colorado and Vegas game. Look, we've been hard on and rough on Georgiev, and rightfully so. He has not been as good the last few months, and he wasn't good yesterday, but he had zero help yesterday. They were awful. They were so bad defensively in front of the guy. Even I can't, just criticize. I can't just point the finger at the goalie yesterday for Colorado. That was just a defensive, complete and utter, just embarrassment defensively from the Colorado Avalanche yesterday. It was I honestly couldn't believe what I was watching. And I can't buy it for a moment that Winnipeg cared about the home ice advantage and second in the division, and Colorado doesn't. No, Colorado's just they got issues right now going into the playoffs, and it's defensively and goaltending. The years last year and 2 years ago when they won the cup, they always played a high risk type of game, where they'd give up chances, they'd give up opportunities, but they wouldn't be these glaring defensive breakdowns that we're seeing right now from them. And that's the difference, and they had the offense, but they at least were sturdy enough on the back end, and they had the puck more. That's another thing. They don't have the puck as much as they used to have. And Winnipeg outshot them 15-3 yesterday. So puck possession is why, they didn't give up a lot of shots and chances 2 years ago when they won the Stanley Cup, because they had the puck most games for like 60, 70, 80% of the game. But now they don't have the puck as much, and we're finding out when they don't have the puck as much, maybe they're not this great defensive team. Maybe they do struggle way more to coverage-wise in their own zone, because it sure as fuck looked that way to me yesterday.
Yeah, and I'm just looking back to, and we talk about with Georgiev, it's not all his fault that he's playing poorly in it. The last 2 years, combined regular season playoffs, had 131 starts. And this is a guy who before that, his highest total was 33 starts. So, this guy's just being overworked, and now to have these defensive issues in front of him at the same time, it's a bad situation for Colorado heading into the postseason.
It certainly is. It's definitely a concern. And like I say, we'll see. Colorado, we're going to find out something about them today, because you need to play a strong, intense 60 minutes today, coming off a game like that. And if you don't, then I'm even more worried about Colorado. All right, next up we've got Carolina and Chicago. Carolina minus 380, road favorites in this game. The total sitting at 5.5, shaded to the over. Of course, this is your traditional Sunday home game at the United Center. A lot of them for Chicago during the course of the season. It's also the final home game of the regular season for the Chicago Blackhawks. But this is one non-playoff team in their final home game that I will certainly not be betting Chicago. Just because for Carolina, look, they're still trying to keep pace with the Rangers and keep the pressure on them in the battle for the Metropolitan Division. They must win this game, obviously, and any win. The only thing that can, if they lose in overtime or a shootout, they're not out. The one thing that would knock them out of the Metro race with the Rangers would be a regulation loss here today against Chicago. Of course, I saw on Twitter earlier they posted the clinching scenario for the Rangers. They clinched the Metro Division with a Carolina loss in regulation, and then someone chimes in, you can just say they're not winning the division today. Something like that. So it's just a little shot there on the Blackhawks from someone in the response columns. It probably is going to be tough for them to win this game. Carolina looks locked in right now. St. Louis did give them a battle, but third period, Carolina turned it up that extra notch, and St. Louis couldn't match it, and they ended up winning 5-2 over the Blues. And keep in mind, the Blues still were mathematically alive in the playoffs, so they had something to play for as well. We'll see how this one goes here against Chicago. I really don't have a lot here pregame on this one. When you look at the way this transpires, over 3.5 is actually somewhat reasonable here. Minus 130, minus 135 for Carolina team total. I might sprinkle on that, but really other than that, nothing as far as side or total here in this game. And keep in mind, and as Landon says, the one thing you do want to mention is how much is Carolina going to go after the Rangers in first in the Metro, which is still in the cards, but it's probably a lot less likely after the Rangers win yesterday. And it is worth noting they've got some questionables here. Chatfield, Pesce on the blue line, Jordan Stahl, their captain, Teuvo Teravainen. They're all questionable to miss to play this game here tonight against Chicago. And as you mentioned, no morning skate today, so you got to watch the lineups, because Brind'Amour did hint that with little nicks and bruises and bumps and bruises that the likes of Aho and Burns, Jarvis, and Gensel are going through, that maybe, just maybe, they're rested here today. So this may not be a full-strength Carolina lineup tonight. This is definitely something you're going to want to watch. That's why I haven't moved on anything yet. Right now, I might get there with the team total. Let's see what the lineups are. That's the lean right now. Nothing locked in as of right now, though. What do you think here, Alex? Carolina, Chicago.
Yeah, one thing I do have right now is the first period over. That's a cheap price at minus $1.15, where we've seen 6-2 to the first period over in the last 8 meetings. We've also seen Chicago play well on these Sunday home games, kind of afternoon, early evening starts. It usually we've seen a lot of high-scoring starts with those contests. So being the last home game for the Hawks, I know they'll do the whole jersey off their back ceremony. So it's going to be huge for whoever gets that draw and ends up getting Bedard's jersey. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people there just for that alone. So there should be some energy early in this game. Like I said, if Carolina is not interested, the Hawks, screw around and win this game at plus 300. It's not the craziest stab in the dark, but like I said, just got to wait and see what the lineups are going to be. So I have the Hawks circled, and might have to try to grab that as soon as I can. But once we hear certain confirmations with Carolina in the lineup.
I want to point out something. You can get plus 1.5 at a plus price puck line with Chicago. So, if you want that extra security, they lose by 1. And they've done that a lot against some of the better teams that come into town where they've given them a battle, but they lose by a goal in overtime or a shootout, or they lose by 1 in regulation, that kind of thing. The plus 1.5, if you think Chicago could hang around, and we're going to find out by the lineup decisions by Rod Brindamore. That's going to dictate, I think, how much they are invested in this game. If they got everybody in, it looks like they're still giving it an honest go for the division. If they're resting Burns and Gensel and Aho and Svechnikov and any of these guys today, multiple key players, then it could be the sign that, you know what, we're really not all that interested in pushing real hard for the division and the Rangers here in these last few games. And that might open the door for Chicago maybe to hang around in this one. Yep.
Yeah.
So it's all lineup based, definitely. You want to keep an eye on what Carolina is going to roll with. Yeah, Martinook, credit to Jimmy Murphy. Jimmy Murphy almost used Jordan Martinook for his bargain bin on Friday when he was with us, and he scored against St. Louis. So great call with that, no doubt. So, and as Matt says, if they bring up some AHL guys, watch out. Those guys may play harder than the big names would. Yeah, that's always a possibility with many of these teams. Because obviously you're playing to make an impact, an impression on the coaching staff. So keep an eye on that. And yes, Chicago signing Frank Nazar, who was just absolutely outstanding in the tournament and all season in college. So looking forward to seeing him down the road with the Blackhawks.
Yeah, I just don't really like the fact that they're going to sign him and burn one of his years of his ELC just for these last couple of games. I'm not a fan of that at all. Just go on and wait and have him, start the year, in Chicago or in Rockford next season. Don't even bother with it. But, they want to show the fans what they got going for the future. So I kind of get that's the angle that they want from them.
And keep in mind, they signed Jackson Blake, who looks like he's going to be a heck of a player, Carolina, for them as well. He'd be someone, if he gets into the lineup, maybe today, because look, there's a chance all these college kids that get signed, there's a good chance they're in the lineup, for 1 or 2 of these remaining games. That's not always a bad goal prop consideration, because these kids, it's funny, they can make an impact. And Jackson Blake has great offensive talent for Carolina. So if he's in, I might sprinkle on Jackson Blake here as far as a goal prop in this game. But again, big if whether he gets in the lineup or not. I don't think we have goalies confirmed yet for this game either. Again, this is it's Kochetkov and a Mrazek projection for the respective teams, but nothing confirmed as of now. All right, final game of this Sunday slate, Arizona Coyotes, soon to be Salt Lake City, Utah Coyotes. I think they're probably going to end up keeping the name, quite honestly. We'll see, but they're on their way to Utah after this week. But right now, for now, they're still Arizona, and they are going to take on the Calgary Flames tonight. Calgary minus 125, home favorites, 6 the total here in this game. Look, they've almost taken this us against the world mentality, this Coyotes team. I've been thoroughly impressed with their professionalism, with their level of play, with beating 2 teams that had everything to play for this week on this road trip, Vancouver and Edmonton, back-to-back. I'm just keeping this simple. I see them playing with some purpose. I see them wanting to go out on a good note here. I think that's even exacerbated now by the fact that these are the remaining few games of the franchise as we know it, called the Arizona Coyotes. There's an onus with this young group that let's go out on a winning note. Let's win as many of these games down the stretch as we possibly can. And I think you got to give Andre Tourigny a lot of credit. A lot of credit. Could you imagine coaching this team and having all the shit that he's had to go through with going to Mullet Arena in the first place, having this relocation stuff swirling around, and still having this team showing up honestly every night with a hard-ass effort? I mean, that's just a tremendous job. I think Andre Tourigny has shown, it's crazy to say this because they haven't made the playoffs yet with him. It's crazy to say it maybe because of that, but I still think he's done one of the best coaching jobs the last few years. I really believe that. Because this team's supposed to be worse than they are. They've had so many adverse conditions and circumstances and things that no NHL player and team should be dealing with in the course of the season when the focus should be on hockey and playing the game. And yet here they are. It's been a hard-working team all year. They have bad nights like anybody, but it usually is not because they don't show up or the effort's not there. And the effort has been through the roof here in these last 2 games. I'll gladly take a shot with them tonight as an underdog here against this Calgary team. Arizona here plus 105 in this game. I do like it. Probably would sprinkle with the team total as well in this game, which usually I do with the dog. Now, this team total, as far as where it is right now, it's a little pricey on the 2.5. So maybe it's over 3 is the route I'll take with that at BetMGM. We'll get that closer to even money here in this game. Calgary, by the way, I want to point out, you're wondering, is this the last? Wait a minute, Ian. Is this the last home game for them? It is not. Their final home game is going to be Thursday against San Jose. So this is not the last home game spot for the non-playoff team for Calgary. They still have one more home game after this. So, yeah, I like Arizona here, and we'll split it with the team total. What do you think here, Alex? Coyotes, Flames.
Yeah, and like I said, obviously the momentum is on the side of the Yotes. Like I said, they're playing, kind of just loose and nothing to lose. Like I said, this is the end of the line as far as them being in Arizona. They've got a lot of whirlwind changes and things to figure out moving forward. But once they get on the ice, they can forget all that. They're playing as a team, playing with community. With this not being Calgary's final home game, I don't know if there's going to be as much momentum and as much hype in the crowd, but this should be a kind of even back and forth game. I like the draw here, plus 360. I definitely think that we can see some back and forth. You got Dustin Wolf starting in net. Coyotes have been getting a lot of shots off, and we know he's had to face a lot of shots because Calgary's defense has been absolutely tragic. So I don't play these too often, but I'm going to go over 25.5 saves with Dustin Wolf as well, minus $1.10. You can find that at a lot of shops, BetMGM and FanDuel. So those are two things: Wolf over and saves 25.5, and the draw plus 360.
There we go. There we go. Definitely, I like those looks as well. The draw, I think, could be live here in this game. Yeah, the human element, Matt. And look, I know Alex, and even we've been critical of the Arizona run here in the NHL. It's been really bad at times. I mean, seeing the half-empty crowd for years there, even when it was at Gila River Arena in Glendale. And then, of course, this Mullet Arena debacle here. But at the end of the day, you do have some sympathy for players and families. They have to uproot now. They got to move to Salt Lake City, find new homes, find new schools for their kids. They just break the kids away from friendships they've formed with other kids and classmates, with where they are. I mean, you do sympathize. There's just a human uprooting that tough to see them go through that, the families. There's no question about that. But I have no sympathy for the ownership here of Arizona and the brutal job they did. As far as everything and not securing the building in a proper location for the building, and then having the politicians there in that state just him and haw and just shoot them down at every turn. Well, that's showing you how much you really want to save this NHL franchise here. You're shooting down this opportunity to put the money in and invest in a new building, which is needed in a location that everyone can get to. I mean, I saw the eye test earlier this week, and Pierre Maguire's talking about how miserable the location has been for the majority of the Coyotes run where the arena has been. How it's like the location's been off. It's been bad. It's been, in these weird areas where there's, middle of nowhere, middle of the desert, so the location, and they needed the building. They never got it. It was botched for years, everything that's gone on with this. And it's unfortunate. Now, I do feel bad for Clint McLean. He is a legit hardcore Coyotes fan from that state. He loves that team. He watches every game. And he's one of the people that the heart is ripped out for a guy like that. He loves that team, and there are those true die-hard, die-in-the-wool Coyotes fans that I feel bad for, but I don't feel bad for the overall situation. It had to be done, and it was just a situation that was untenable, and I think Gary Bettman and the NHL are culpable too for dragging this thing along as long as they did, knowing that how much of a disaster it turned into.
Yeah, number one blame, by all means, is pointed on Gary Bettman. Because this went on for way too long, and I think people forget. Everybody's talking about how bad this current ownership group is. There's been 3 ownership groups in the last decade, and before that, this team was owned and ran by the NHL for 4 years. This has been a shit show beyond shit shows in this league for quite some time, and you're going to go back and forth about the whole thing with the arena. This has been an issue since they literally got there. America West Arena, it's now known as the Footprint Center, been there since the 80s, was built strictly for the Suns, and it was never they were never able to properly adapt the building. So the team didn't like it. The Suns didn't want to chip in any money to try to remodel and restructure at that time. That's how they end up leaving there, end up going out to Glendale, and basically the Glendale property was pennies on the dollar for how they were able to build that arena. So they figured, okay, well, we can get out of this bad deal that we have in Phoenix and move to Glendale, as they're trying to build Glendale up into this big kind of mega mall area, which never really took to fruition. Now you're going back and forth. Everybody says, well, they should be in the East Valley. They should be in Scottsdale. Scottsdale has numerous times turned down the chance to build an arena in that area. Now they want to wait till the 11th hour to pass something through and then put it on the taxpayers' dime. And they said no. And I said good on them for not having it, because at the end of the day, ownership needs to, and that's in a lot of cities, ownership needs to step up and put their own money towards some of these projects. So it's an absolute nightmare. I feel bad for the true diehard fans of this team, but also at the same time, there was a whole lot of Fairweather fans, and there's a reason why that attendance, even when they were at their best, when they won the Pacific Division and made that run to the Western Conference Final, they still were only averaging just over 14,000 fans a night. That's not going to work. Bettman literally said about a few years ago, when they announced that Vegas was coming in the league, that a place has to have at least 15,000 a night. He pretty much openly said, he said that's why Quebec City is not even being considered. And then he doubles down and allows them to play 2-3 seasons in a 5,000 seat arena, knowing that it was going to crater, especially with the whole money situation, all the escrow situation, getting in revenue. Bettman at the same time gave Arizona a million chances to make this thing work in the state of Arizona, and no one stepped up and properly did it the right way. So it's just an absolute disaster. Now they're going to Utah. Now they've got ownership that claim they're going to spend money and actually be aggressive and try to be competitive. And it's going to be really tough for fans in that state of Arizona to see this team possibly progress. And it could be one of those things like we saw with Quebec City. They lost that team, and all of a sudden they go to Denver and end up being a Stanley Cup champion. Wouldn't shock me one bit if we see the Yotes actually maybe turn some things around once they get to Utah and this team actually be a contender in the West 2 or 3 years from now.
I like it. Well said. I like that owner for Utah, that Ryan Smith there. He's a young guy. I think he's got some savvy to him. I think he's going to do a hell of a job to try to get the. Now, remember, this is not a state that's used to high level hockey at this kind of level anyway. So you got to build it. You got to build the following. But I think this guy has the right chops and the right incentive and motivation to do so. He really wants to make this work. And I think that my early reports on this prospective Utah owner is that a thumbs up. I think he's going to try to do the absolute best he can with it. I think it's and I think he's kind of got that go-getter mentality. I like that.
And I hope they lean into the history of hockey in Utah, specifically like talk about with the Grizzlies. We saw Vegas and Seattle both do that. They kind of, Seattle saw the Winter Classic jerseys and just kind of their overall themes. They had kind of incorporated some things from the Metropolitans of way back when. Vegas taking some elements from the Wranglers and the Thunder from back in the day. Build upon the history, albeit how small it is, that's already been there in the Utah area, the Salt Lake City area, moving forward to kind of get away from it. I don't think they are going to keep that Coyotes name, to be honest. I think they might go something completely different. Change the uniforms, change it, because this is the other insane thing. There's still these reports talking about that with this expansion, essentially on the rise to 34, 36 teams, that Arizona could be right back in the running to get another franchise, because the National Hockey League, they just don't know when to quit whenever they get hit in the head. Well, let's go to Atlanta for a third time. Let's go to Arizona for a second time. Shit that clearly didn't work for however many years, but they're still going to talk about it, put it back on the table. So if they do that, then by all means, the Coyotes' look and likeness and image and all that should stay in the state of Arizona, and Utah should be something completely different.
Yeah, definitely. It's like I said, it's going to be interesting to see how this works and exactly what's the team name going to be. All that kind of decision making has to go into it. You know what? And I agree. The reports were when they found out officially from Bill Armstrong that they're relocating. And from a lifestyle perspective, Matt, you're right. It's tough. You're leaving the weather, the great golf. I mean, there's no doubt that Salt Lake City's, I'm sure there's some positives, but from just a lifestyle perspective, it's tough to give up that weather and that great golf and the sunshine and barely any rainy days and go to Utah. And they'll
be hanging out at Cheesecake Factory a lot.
Yeah,
That's what every NBA team. That's what they always say when they go to Salt Lake City. They're all at Cheesecake Factory. That's the hot spot. When Cheesecake Factory is the hot spot in your city, it says a lot.
Basically, if Cheesecake Factory is the hot spot in its city, it's not so hot. The city.
Not at all.
Pretty much, yeah. That's the issue right there. There's no question. But for tonight, we like Arizona, and we like the Coyotes, and I think they can get the job done there against Calgary. As far as props, by the way, I'm going to just repeat basically the same players I keep on talking about. Michelli, Cooley, Gunther, Josh Doan, of course, who has chipped in offense as well for the Coyotes since being called up. So really those same players for Arizona. I will throw one out there for Calgary. He's been just on fire the last week or two. Andrei Kuzmenko for Calgary has been excellent of late. So probably some good props there as well with him. And by the way, Eddie Lack apparently spotted one of Alex's tweets, I think yesterday, about the Arizona situation, ripping it, and Gary Bettman for hanging on so long with it. So apparently Eddie's got something to say about that in rebuttal on Friday when he joins the show for the playoff preview. Bring it. Yeah. I was going to say, is he really that emotional and sad about this whole thing if he's not living in Arizona and not able to go to games?
And then his biggest thing was, and this is so telling of not just him, but a lot of how the Arizona fans felt when he says the arena's too far away. No one wants to spend half of a day in the car. Everybody wants to just hop out of their pool, grab a beer, and then be able to bop down to the game. That's not how that works in most cities, especially in a city that has high traffic like Boston, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles. Yeah, I remember going to Hawks games. It takes at least 45 minutes, and I'm in the city, not super far away, but it takes at least 45 minutes to an hour on a weekday. And sometimes on weekends, especially having to go through expressway traffic, you're talking about an hour and a half. So, the whole thing of everything being just super duper convenient. Even I live here in downtown St. Paul. I'm walking distance from the arena. The majority of the fans, they live at least an hour away in all these different suburbs. So that's always going to be some kind of an issue with any NHL team. You can't just keep blaming that on, this place is too hard to get to. This place is too small. This place isn't built for hockey. You got to figure all those things out at once, and there has to be some compromise one way or another.
Absolutely. Yep. It's hard to argue with any of that. But you're right. It's not like, I could just walk down my street 10 minutes and there's the arena. It doesn't work that way.
It's not a grocery store.
No. Exactly. I wish it would be that way, but it's just not real. It's just not reality. That's the thing. Great stuff. Shout out to everyone in the chat. Hit the like button. We appreciate it very much. By the way, our BetCast schedule, again, we got to keep reminding you because we want everyone to be part of this, as many people as possible, especially for the Patreon exclusive ones, because this is the time of year to sign up right now. Patreon.com/Ice Guys. It's just $10 per month because your sign up means you will be able to tune in and watch our 3 Patreon exclusive live betcasts here in the month of April. We've got Tuesday night this week, April 16th, Patreon exclusive betcast, the final one of the regular season, and then 3 Stanley Cup playoffs betcasts, Monday, April 22nd, free for all, and then 2 Patreon exclusive betcasts during the playoffs on Thursday, April 25th and Tuesday, April 30th. All these betcasts start at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Pacific. So make sure you join us. Again, just $10 per month, patreon.com/Ice Guys. You'll get our daily sides, totals, and player props posted there each and every day, as well as bonus content, goalie charts, totals charts, and, of course, access to our exclusive live betcasts, including the betcast this Tuesday, which once again is Patreon exclusive. So sign up, just $10 per month, patreon.com/Ice Guys, just $10 per month. And make sure you check out the Ice Guys store. Get on those deals that are available now at iceguys.myspreadshop.com.
Yes, just 2 days left for free standard shipping on all orders. We've got everything in stock, hats, t-shirts, hoodies, you name it, we got it. All available right now. 2 days left with standard shipping. That's at iceguys.myspreadshop.com.
The other Robinson is Matt's brother, who's often with us on the betcast. That would be Ryan. There we go. That's who you see in the chat. The other Robinson. tells you how much we think of Matt. That Ryan's just the other Robinson here when it comes to the YouTube chat right here. Great stuff, great show. We will be back in just a moment with Bargain Bin Special of the night and Best Bets coming up right after we hear from our good friends at Boston Hemp Inc. All right, Boston Hemp Inc. Make sure you check them out. Get 20% off all orders on the website using the promo code IceGuys at bostonhempinc.com. All right, Bargain Bin Special of the night. Well, now we have just 3 games to choose from because the first one started Seattle and St. Louis. Alex, what do you like for your Bargain Bin Special on this Sunday?
I got nothing. I was looking through and combing through. Like I said, we're waiting for these lineup changes with Carolina and Chicago. Not really crazy about anything scoring wise in Arizona, Calgary, and so this is a pass for me on the bargain bin. I will have something tomorrow, but nothing for tonight.
I have one. Someone that Matt Robinson knows. He's got a connection to him. He's been good since he's been called up to Arizona. We'll go Josh Doan for bargain bins. It was going to be Zach Bolduc, but the game started already. So if it was a later game, Zach Bolduc would definitely have been my bargain bin special for the St. Louis Blues today. But that game is already underway. Let's go Josh Doan here for the Arizona Coyotes plus 450 here at PointsBet. You know, in Alberta, looking to make an impression, I think. And look, he has played well. This whole team is just so full of great talent offensively. There is no question about that. And I think when you look at what Josh Doan's brought to the table is just a little bit more of that. And I do want to point something out, too, about Shane Doan, his father. He's a native of Halkirk, Alberta, east of Red Deer, and not that far from Calgary. Okay, so this is where Pops grew up. So, another little nugget there, an intangible that might help out a guy like Josh Doan. Hey, have a good night back to close to home for the old man, Shane Doan. So Josh Doan for the Arizona Coyotes plus 450 at PointsBet for my bargain bin special of the night for this Sunday slate. All right, best bets. Alex, fresh off a best bet winner yesterday with that Lightning Capitals first period over. What do you got for best bet today?
Yeah, we'll head on over to the west side of Chicago. Carolina and the Blackhawks, final home game for the Hawks. We've seen some high-scoring starts for them lately at home. This is a 6-2 trend. The last 8 meetings with these two clubs, I expect goals early. Give me the Hawks and the Canes. First period over 1.5. You get a minus $1.15 at Caesars. That is my Sunday best bet.
All right, there we go. Carolina, Chicago, over 1.5 first period for Alex B. Smith with his best bet for this Sunday slate. My best bet for this Sunday slate, I'm going to go with Colorado team total over 1. That's the bet I like the most. Colorado team total over 1. And that is at BetMGM. Now, that is a bet that you could probably – BetMGM is definitely one of the few, maybe the only books that you could bet that at. But I like it, and I prefer it. I like the puck line too, but I'm worried about them giving up a goal or two, Colorado. But I think they definitely get on the board. They bring that kind of a spirit early in the hockey game against the Vegas Golden Knights. I almost went with first period over, honestly, here as my best bet, but I'm going to go for the Colorado side of it. Again, first period, team total, Colorado Avalanche, over 1, plus 150. Keep in mind, I also have a small sprinkle over 1.5 Colorado team total first period plus 260. So, but to be a little safe, because in case they just score one in the period, we'll get our money back. It'll push. We'll go with that. Colorado team total over 1 plus 150 in the first period. That is going to be my best bet here for this Sunday NHL card. That'll wrap up this edition of the Ice Guys. Thanks to everyone for joining us. Hit the like button on the way out. We appreciate it very much. A reminder, the Ice Guys is live 7 days a week, Monday to Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern, Saturday and Sunday, noon Eastern. If you can't watch the show live, download the Ice Guys podcast in audio form on all major podcast platforms. Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and more. Download the Ice Guys podcast when you can't watch the show live. For Alex B. Smith, I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great Sunday. Enjoy the games and good luck. And we'll be back with you tomorrow on Monday for another edition of the Ice Guys.